Hello guys, my name is SVB and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be dropping the next installment in my thought process series. By popular demand and as logic would dictate, I'm going to follow up the theory behind main tank picks with the theory behind off tank picks and talk you through exactly why you'd pick D.Va, Zarya and Roadhog. So let's get to it guys. So after talking about main tanks, it makes sense to follow it up with the off tank since they almost always come in pairs. Not only do tanks often complement each other, but they're also supposed to work together. So this principle of pairing is very important in Overwatch. Now, most of these pairs are already well established, but a lot of the community don't know them. And even those who do, often don't know why we make these pairings. So let's talk about them. Well, firstly there's Rein, who goes with D.Va and Zarya, and also Roadhog sometimes. Then there's Orisa, who goes with D.Va and Hog. And finally, there's Winston, who goes with D.Va and Zarya. Now you'll notice off the bat that D.Va fits into every comp, and although Hog is in 2 comps, he's nowhere near as good a pick as Zarya or D.Va. This speaks to the meta more than anything, and where the heroes are in the state of the game. But on top of that, there's also the potential to pick Hammond as an off tank along with Winston. But we'll get to that. So let's talk through why these are the accepted pairs amongst the Overwatch community. Let's start with Rein Zarya, one of the oldest tank pairings in Overwatch. Why is it good? Well, firstly, Rein and Zarya's abilities complement each other incredibly well. The bubble that Zarya can place on Reinhardt serves 2 purposes. Firstly, it allows the Reinhardt a chance to take a few swings or fire strike, which lets him gain ult charge. And it gives Zarya high energy, which lets her build ult and also output a lot more damage. It can also provide Reinhardt with a chance to put his shield down for a bit, and even if he doesn't, the damage aimed directly at Reinhardt will still hit the bubble and give Zarya charge. So this dynamic works really well. On top of this, a Rein Zarya can sync playstyles very well. For example, an aggressive Reinhardt who likes to brawl or make ambitious charges can be bailed out by a Zarya who has good bubble management and can keep one in reserve for him. Similarly, an aggressive Zarya who likes to build energy and then try to lay out lots of damage and push forward a lot can do so very easily behind a Rein shield, and that Reinhardt can enable her that way. Finally, Rein is also excellent follow-up into a Graviton, because his melee cleave is guaranteed to hit everyone regardless of shields and defense matrix. One good tip is that if you have both Grav and Shatter in pocket, go for Shatter first. If it connects, you can save the Grav and just target down the immobilized characters. If it whiffs, you then drop Graviton, and the Reinhardt can swing into it and build himself up to another Shatter very quickly. Now let's move on to our next pairing, Rein D.Va. Now this combo isn't necessarily as scary or deadly as a Rein Zarya, but it is a lot more flexible. What D.Va provides that Zarya doesn't is mobility, and the ability to shut down flankers, even those very far away. The defense matrix can serve the same purpose as the Zarya shield, in that it can allow the Rein a chance to fire strike, swing, or put his shield down, safe in the knowledge that the D.Va has his back. D.Va is also very good at helping Rein win any shield wars that he gets engaged in. Then, there's the many ways you can combine their 2 ults. The most classic trick is to shoot the D.Va bomb behind the enemy Reinhardt, forcing him to turn his shield. If he does, your Reinhardt can shatter, knocking him down, and that will cause the bomb to get maximum value. If the enemy Rein doesn't turn, well, he's dead. In the Goats meta, where Grav is also in the mix, you can drop the self-destruct into the Grav and have your Rein charge the enemy Reinhardt away, denying the enemy team a shield for protection from the self-destruct. So overall, this is probably a more defensive combination than Rein Zarya, but definitely one that can work really well. D.Va has the verticality and mobility that Zarya doesn't, but Zarya probably outputs more damage, so pick and choose whatever you prefer. Now finally, let's talk Road Rein. Now this is an okay tank comp, and one that used to be a lot more common when Roadhog was stronger in the meta. Where it's good is that if there's a Rein versus Rein, Roadhog can easily help win the shield war by constantly right-clicking the enemy Rein's shield. However, where this comp fails is that unlike with D.Va or Zarya, the Roadhog can't support or supplement the Reinhardt. There's no protection should the enemy come hard at your Rein, or should he find himself out of protection and needing some help. Also, both D.Va and Zarya can peel for their backline very easily, either with a well-timed bubble or a defense matrix, which might save a player's life. Roadhog's only form of support is to kill things, which is fine, but it's not as reliable as straight up protection. On top of this, both these characters are really slow and quite easily outpositioned. But there is someone that Roadhog works with much better, and that's Orisa. As I spoke about in my previous video, Orisa is great at taking one static spot, and for that reason, she works really well with Hog. Firstly, because there's the halt hook combo, which is where an Orisa fires her mini Graviton, and as she pulls in the enemies, the Roadhog hooks that spot and gets a free catch. If you can coordinate and pull this off consistently, it's almost a free win on its own. Secondly, Roadhog's presence can make it incredibly difficult to get to Orisa for the enemy team, since he can output so much damage pressure from behind her shield with his right clicks, and, should the enemy get close, he can hook and left click them to death. So he's a serious threat that acts as a bodyguard for the Orisa in a way that he can't quite do when he's behind Reinhardt. Where this comp lacks though, is flexibility. On its own, it has very little range, and it can't contest flankers attacking from multiple angles, which is why the quad DPS comp often goes around it. So in this setup, you're kind of reliant on your DPS to make up that slack, and that's not always a good idea, particularly when Orisa mandates a bunker type setup. Speaking of which, if you set up a bunker, which is what you're likely going to do with these two heroes, once it gets broken, the Hog and Orisa can both find it very difficult to set back up again, at which point switching might be your best option. The more flexible, but less scary version of this duo is Orisa D.Va. Now, D.Va gives Orisa what Hog can't, and that's mobility. If you want to set up a bunker comp, you want to set it up slightly away from the objective, because you want to outrange the enemy with, say, your Junkrat or your Bastion. That means that if the enemy runs on the point, you're forced to dislodge your bunker to contest them. D.Va answers this problem perfectly. By having D.Va, you can leave her to contest point, while your bunker stays on their vantage position and lays out the damage that the enemy can't contest. As long as D.Va stays in sightlines of her healers, she'll take way too long to kill, and the enemy will be dead long before she is. D.Va can also provide great support for the bunker by eating projectiles that might threaten it. It's not as offensive as the Orisa combo, but it's arguably more stable. To give you an example of what I mean, I'm going to show you guys a clip from the pugs that I run every weekend. Now in this clip, the defending team are going to run a bunker comp on Hanamura Point A. A great idea ordinarily. However, they don't have a D.Va or a designated person to touch point, so watch how it goes for them. I mean, it's very strong on Hanamura, and we've seen full holds quite easily. The problem is they don't have a D.Va. The reason you run a D.Va is so that someone can touch a point. And as you see, the blue team are just going to go straight. Oh, nice hook! But the follow-up isn't quite there. And see, now the blue team are going to go on point and watch the red team panic. I guarantee the red team trickle in and die. Seems to already be happening. Two members are already on point while the rest of the team are still running around. There we go. As predicted, the red team fall apart the minute somebody touches point. No D.Va, nobody designated with the role to actually touch point. So this is the thing, right, guys? When you run a bunker comp, the inevitable consequence is that they will run on point at some time, and you need to be able to respond, and that the response is not let's all jump down on the point. So as you heard me point out in the casting, that's the reason why running a bunker works better when you have a D.Va who can touch point in and out quickly, and stay alive while the bunker stays put and comes through with the damage. Now Hog can also do that job, but he's a lot easier to isolate and kill than the D.Va is, and essentially one anti-nade can shut him down entirely. So weigh up your options. Once again, you have the opportunity to go for a more aggressive comp or a more defensive and safe comp. Now if you have seen my pugs, you know what I think of Orisa Zarya. It really is not a good combo, guys. Now the reason for that is that fundamentally these two characters want opposite things to happen. Orisa sets up her shield to soak up damage, and unlike Reinhardt, you can put it up and down with a moment's notice. And with the refresh rate, Orisa can essentially just keep pumping out shield after shield after shield, ensuring her team takes no damage. Zarya, on the other hand, wants to take some damage with her bubbles, because that's the only way she'll build charge. This means that to do this, she'll have to either walk in front of the shield, or ask the Orisa to do the same. Both are incredibly risky if your bubble breaks faster than anticipated, and you suddenly find yourself out of position. Secondly, Orisa relies on outranging her enemy. If the enemy is within brawling range, Orisa is terrible, because her primary fire doesn't do that much damage up close, compared to say a Rein hammer or a Winston Tesla cannon, and she has very little escape option. Zarya, on the other hand, absolutely loves a brawl, true to her lore, and she relies on getting enemies within range of her beam. When you run this combo, inevitably one of them is going to have to play in a way that isn't optimal for that hero. That's why this tank duo is left better in the spawn room. Now if you're waiting for me to name a better duo, you won't have to wait long, because Winston D.Va is coming up. Now these two are the OG dive tanks for a reason. They pair fantastically well. They both have amazing mobility and can keep up with each other's dives. D.Va acts as a great support for Winston because she can alternate her protection with him. You fly in together, and the D.Va can defense matrix you on entry if you need to block a lot of damage from, let's say, a Widowmaker headshot or a Junkrat spam, for example. Then, the Winston drops his bubble, while defense matrix reset, and when the bubble is broken, you should have a bit of defense matrix charged back, ready to protect your Winston some more. So once again, when you have complementary abilities, like the Rein Zarya bubble dynamic, like the Hold Hook Orisa Hog dynamic, and like this defense matrix bubble dynamic, it's always a good sign that the heroes are pairing well together. Another strength of this duo is that they're both excellent at isolating and picking off targets, meaning that any out of position characters can be very quickly punished by their dives. which is why dive is often the answer against a scattered or DPS heavy comp. If you want to deal with that kind of setup, or you want to deal with snipers, this is definitely your go-to comp. Next we have Winston Zarya. Now, someone recently asked me why you'd play Winston Zarya over Winston D.Va, and honestly the answer is, well, you'd do it if you just didn't like playing D.Va. You see, the good parts of having Zarya behind a Winston is that the bubble can act as a version of defense matrix that can be placed on the Winston before he drops his own bubble, giving Zarya a free 40 energy. And once Zarya builds up energy and builds a graviton surge, Winston is great at cleaving through the graviton because he can hit all the clumped up enemies with his primary fire. However, these two are not the perfect fit by any means. Firstly, Winston has far higher mobility than Zarya, meaning that she can't follow him should he decide to dive into the backline or try to pick off an isolated target, as I spoke about earlier. That means that both of them are going to be, to a large extent, on their own. Secondly, Winston is not equipped to hold back 6 enemies at once in the way that Reinhardt is, unless he has Primal Rage. Sure, his Tesla cannon has great cleave, but his bubble will break really quickly, and after that he's vulnerable. He has to jump pack to get out. Zarya, meanwhile, quite likes brawling, as I said before, and if she has the necessary protection, her right clicks can get huge value, and so can her beam, and that's how she gets gravitons quickly. 100 energy Zarya pretty much out DPSs anyone else in the tank line, so Winston doesn't really enable her in the way that a Reinhardt does. So essentially, when you pick this combo, you're running either a worse version of Rein Zarya or Winston D.Va. Now, if there's one tank combo worse than the Orisa Zarya combo I spoke of earlier, it's Hog Winston. This is just absolutely nightmarish as a main tank off tank duo. These guys are doing absolutely opposite things, and only in the most rare of scenarios would this be the right call. First of all, they have different mobilities. Winston being very fast, Hog being very slow. They both have different ranges. Hog wants to be a little bit away so he can hook and spam damage. Winston needs to be up close to do damage. Hog can't support Winston in any meaningful way, which is the supposed job of an off-tank. He can't protect the Winston, can't bubble him, can't defense matrix him. He can't follow him, he can't peel for him, and nor for that matter can he peel for the backline while Winston is being aggressive. These guys just don't pair well together, and don't interact in any way that's actually good for your team. So just avoid playing them unless there's some very specific reason you feel you need to play the two characters. Finally, that brings us to Winston Hammond. Now, in my main tank video, I discussed how due to his playstyle, Hammond is best suited to being a solo tank in a chaotic, DPS heavy comp. That means it's difficult to run an off tank with him, since he's not suited to take the main tank responsibilities in a standard 2-2-2. However, he can act as a second tank to Winston, again doing something of a similar job to what D.Va does. Essentially like a Winston D.Va combo, this is a pairing that relies heavily on covering the distance between you and the enemy quickly, and trying to pick them off before they have a chance to respond. Now both of these characters have great burst upon impact potential. Winston with his jump pack melee combo, and Hammond with his slam shoot melee combo. So if they jump together on the same target, they can quite quickly take them out, especially if they're a squishy DPS or healer. Both these guys are great stall picks as well, and if Winston has Primal Rage and Hammond is spinning around on point, it could take an eternity to dislodge them, making them viable on control point maps. However, once again, without the D.Va in the mix, you will lack peel. Hammond is almost incapable of peeling, and Winston is not the best at it. On top of that, Hammond is a bit of a lone wolf, and getting him to be where you want him at certain times can be difficult with the nature of how his movement works, so it can be tricky to get the dives right, and it's certainly much easier with Winston D.Va. And always with Overwatch, if you can get value in an easy way, why wouldn't you take it? So to summarize guys, don't pick Zarya if the enemy is out of reach. This can be in cases where they're too far away, and you can't get to them quickly enough. So for example, spamming you from high ground that you can't get to without dying. Or this can be when your team doesn't want to be too close to the enemy, like when you run an Orisa bunker or a sniper comp. Zarya is also a far less effective character when she's not got any charge. So if you're struggling to build any, then swap off. But if you can build charge, then Zarya is a super scary prospect to come up against. Often when an enemy runs characters like Junkrat or Hanzo, people who will spam a general area without picking a target per se, Zarya can use that to her advantage to build a ton of charge. Zarya is also great when she can get up and close and start brawling it out with the enemy team, using her beam and her right clicks to dish out an enormous amount of damage. If she's protected well, like she is behind a Rein shield, she can pretty much win games on her own, particularly because Graviton is such a powerful ultimate. Next, D.Va. She's not good when, well, she's never really not good. And you can fit D.Va into pretty much any comp and she'll work. But if you want to run a brawly comp with Rein Zarya, then that can definitely get a lot more value than D.Va. And again, if you want a really aggressive Orisa Hog combo, that can work too. Now the reason the D.Va is so good is that she can perform all sides of the off-tank role depending on your playstyle. She can take one-on-ones and be more kill-hungry, shutting down flankers, or she can sit beside her backline and keep them safe from divers and particularly projectile damage, which she's great at shutting down. She has great verticality and she can protect her main tank, and all round she's just plain good. She does everything you would want in an off tank, and yet she's really often neglected. She doesn't really get the pick percentage that her viability deserves. So if you're someone who's interested in playing off tank, I highly recommend you pick up D.Va. Now this might change if Blizzard decide to patch her out of existence, but as of right now, you can pretty much never go wrong picking D.Va. Finally, there's Roadhog, who's objectively the worst off tank, at least as the meta stands. He's great with Orisa because he has so much shield break, and the halt hook combo allows for easy kills. In general, you'd pick Hog if you want to make a pick heavy comp, because his hook is one of the best one shots in the game, and he's all about getting kills. However, he's got absolutely no verticality or mobility, meaning that he can be found out of position very easily. He's also got no peel mechanics, meaning he can't help his main tank or his backline directly. He can shut down flankers if he's disciplined and sits with his backline, but his fat hitbox and lack of armor means he can easily be farmed for ult charge and be particularly weak to any sort of shotgun damage. So don't just pick him blindly. Make sure that when you step out of spawn with Roadhog, that you've thought about what he's adding to the team. Are you picking him because you just want to go on solo missions and you can keep yourself alive? Or are you picking him because your team needs that pick potential that Hog brings? These are all part of the decision making processes that you will go through in Overwatch, and so hopefully understanding these principles will better equip you guys to make the right decision in the right scenario for your game. So that's all I got for today, guys. I hope you found this video helpful, and I'm glad that so many of you enjoyed the main tank version of this series. Like I said, it's never good to play Overwatch in a flowchart mentality, and to approach the game as play X hero on X map against X comp. So overall, I've tried to talk through the situations in which a certain hero pick is good, and why you pick certain off tanks, and why they pair well with their main tanks. And usually comes down to how they coordinate, how their abilities mesh together, and how their playstyles match up. So if you found this video helpful, or if you learned something new, please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help. And as always, a big shout out to my patrons who've been there for me since day one. Now all my social media links will be down below in the description, and if you liked a sneak peek of what you saw in the pugs, then feel free to come on down to my Discord server and join me for some games that we play on every Friday and Saturday evening. So that's it from me. I'll be back next week with another video, and I'll see you guys soon.